Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on what time you're watching this. My name's Connor from 905 Review, and we're trying something different here today. Usually I'm telling you guys what to give a spin, but today you're telling me what to give a spin. I've gotten a couple recommendations throughout the duration of running my channel, and we're going to peep some out today. I'm still kind of just brainstorming what the best way of formatting this is, since they aren't necessarily albums that I'm passionate about. I might have less to say about them. So I figured we'd just cover 3 all in one video, just not as in-depthly broken into necessarily. With that being said, we start off with the Arctic Monkeys album Humbug. This suggestion comes from Cake Unicorn Pirate Man, and don't worry bro, I didn't forget about you. I know it's been a long time, but this suggestion was made on my Arctic Monkeys debut album, Give This a Spin video, and with that being such an early album review of mine, I didn't want to do another Monkeys one right after and have them make up like a quarter of my channel's contents at that point. For some background, Arctic Monkeys are an indie rock foursome from Sheffield, England. They were a very fast rising group with the instant successes of their first 2 albums, Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not, and Favorite Worst Nightmare. The band's 3rd album, Humbug, would see them shift a bit further away from the harder rocking sound they had on their debut, as they started to slowly get away from on their 2nd album already. And here you see them more closely resemble the sound that they currently have. The album would also be produced by Queens of the Stone Age frontman Josh Homme. Opening the album is the 3rd single from it, being My Propeller. It's got a nice looming, I'll say, guitar riff to it. The album's 2nd track, and its 1st single, Crying Lightning, opens off with a pretty grooving bass line. I love the guitars throughout this song, both the progressions and the overall sound of them, especially the one dreamy one just echoing, and then at another point the other one doing just the high-pitched slides that it does. After this is the track Dangerous Animals, and it too starts very grooving. While I do like the song, I can't help but feel like it sounds like a Queens of the Stone Age song just being done by somebody else. With Homme producing and contributing backing vocals, that of course adds to this, but it sounds quite reminiscent of the Queens of the Stone Age album Era Vulgaris, which came out only 2 years prior, so it would make sense that Homme would still be in that kind of zone in terms of the sound he's going for. The 4th track on the album, Secret Door, starts off all nice and soothe and relaxing, but then the instruments really pick up and kick in, and what a relief it is, because you especially hear Matt Helders on drums, and it feels like up to this point he hasn't gotten enough of a chance to shine on this album. The organ use in this song is good, and the change up into a more dreamier sound in the bridge and the outro is great as well. After this we have Potion Approaching, which is easily my favorite song off this album, no contest. As simple as the riff in it is, I cannot stress enough how rocking it is. The 2nd half sees the band use a lot more sway in the song, and I'm not crazy about how they softened up in the chorus on this, because I feel it could have just made it that much better if they stayed so hard rocking on it. In addition to the band's evolving sound, the next track, Fire and the Thud, really showcases Alex Turner's growth as a lyricist from the band's 2 previous albums, as he includes many great poetic lines on this one. While that's nice and all, I can't really get behind this song. It's a casual and laid back one, but doesn't really do anything for me, and all the oohs don't add to that. It's not a bad song per se, but I would call it a forgettable one. Next is the second single released from the album, Cornerstone, and the song is certainly worth a chuckle. It sees the narrator running into women around town who remind him of an ex-girlfriend. And after chatting up these girls, he always blows his chances by asking if he can call these women by his ex's name. The kicker is that in the final verse of the song, he actually runs into his ex's sister, who says, "You can call me anything you want." After this is the track Dance Little Liar, about a compulsive liar who is in way too deep, yet still unwilling to admit anything. Interestingly enough, this is apparently the song that convinced Josh Homme to take these guys in and work with them. I mean, I myself don't personally see it. Aside from the drumming, not a whole lot on it stands out to me, though the guitar solo in it was also quite redeeming. Next up is the track Pretty Visitors, about the group's fame, the expectations that they have, and the music industry as a whole. Humbug saw Alex Turner experimenting with many different keyboards and keyboard sounds, with the organ opening this track maybe being the most apparent of them. After this, the song shifts into a pretty rocking number, probably the heaviest on the album. I'm a bit surprised that in the past I never really thought much of this song, because it's now dawning on me how great it really is. And ending the album with the longest track, we have The Jeweler's Hands. It has a nice groove, the constant piano's nice. Overall, it seems like a good tune, but I feel like it just hasn't truly clicked with me yet. But it does seem like it has potential, and I'm hoping that with some more listens over time, I'll appreciate it even more. Humbug fared well, peaking at number 1 on the UK album charts and 15 on the US Billboard, as well as being certified platinum by the British phonographic industry. And this album is seen as the pivotal turning point in the direction the band wanted to take their sound. This brought in mixed reviews from the critics, with some like NME calling it the band's worst album, and others like The Independent calling it their best album. Where do we even start? Humbug was such a change for the group. They utilized a lot more added production, which worked at times. Overall, the sound design was good, the guitars were good, the drums were good, as always. With that being said, I'm going to stamp this album with a B grading. I'm definitely an older Monkees guy myself. I prefer the raw energy sound they used to bring as opposed to the more pop sound they've transitioned into. I mean, supposedly 3.5 minutes is the recommended perfect length for a pop song, and they definitely had their eyes on that here. Now, I love Josh Homme, but his production and involvement with the Monkees, plus their desired change in sound, has them sounding to me like Queens of the Stone Age light. I'm sorry. Now, I will say, there aren't any bad songs on this album, but in my opinion, there's just not enough highlights, which leaves the album just kind of there. The next request comes from a longtime supporter of the channel, one Mr. Shane Matthew, aka Sugar Shane O'Malley. I was strictly informed I had to call him that. And that request is for none other than Mungo Jerry. Mungo Jerry is a bluesy pop rock group, not a man as I always assumed, hailing from England. They were constantly changing their members, even frontman Ray Dorset was kicked out at one point, albeit briefly. But the group really found their footing off the massive success of the hit single In the Summertime. The group's debut self-titled album was released in England in 1970, but when the hit single In the Summertime came out, it was added on all subsequent printings of the album. The only issue with this is that all of these prints were for international releases, leaving the British population without the band's biggest song to be heard. As a result, they would add it onto their second album, Electronically Tested. Opening the album is the track She Rode. It's a fun, upbeat, piano-led piece, really getting us in the groove for what you can expect for the rest of the album.
Took a trip on an old ferry and she rode. Ah, did she roll?
If you weren't having enough fun with this song already, they even bring in a kazoo, maybe the goofiest instrument out there. Getting heavier, we have the band's cover of the Willie Dixon track, I Just Wanna Make Love to You. It's incredibly bluesy, and it's actually pretty damn raunchy too. I love the sound of the guitar on this, and it actually features some pretty killer harmonica playing. The group ends on an awesome lengthy jam, stretching the song out to 9 minutes. And after hearing this, it's incredible to think they're only considered a one-hit wonder. And of course, the aforementioned mega hit In the Summertime. Right off the bat, it's so fun and cheery with its bright keys and the, I guess it's beatboxing in place of drums. I think it's easy to see why the song was so successful. It's obviously not the most artistic thing ever made, but sometimes all you need is just a fun, happy, cheery, upbeat tune to kick back to.
Sing along with us, dee 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 dee, da 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 da, yeah we're happy, da da da.
After this is the third single from Electronically Tested, Somebody Stole My Wife. It actually sounds optimistic even, between the goofy kazoo and the upbeat piano and the overall cheery tone to it.
Woo! Somebody stole my wife, yeah, somebody stole my wife.
After this is the album's second single, Baby Jump. It's another gritty and rocking song. The lyrics on it are very subpar. It's just typical 70s rock frontman singing about all the ladies he's gonna get. The album's sixth track, Follow Me Down, sees the band back in their cute and cheery sound. And it does have much more charming lyrics than the previous track, planting the image of what a cute, happy, fun life a couple could live together. While the piano does work really well for this song, I personally feel like the harmonica is just too out of place. This is followed by Memoirs of a Stockbroker, which sees an older narrator reflecting on the past stages of their life. It's got a nice groove to it, and it's one of few songs I can think of off the top of my head that have a recorder in it. A recorder solo, even. 5th grade me would have been pumped to hear that. We then get to You Better Leave That Whiskey Alone. Similar to Somebody Stole My Wife, it feels way too upbeat and cheery between the piano and the kazoo in it, considering the lyrical contents of the songs. While I get that this is an old album, and old boomer humor is just based around hating your spouse, that could, I guess, explain why Somebody Stole My Wife would be cheery, because if they're taking them out of your life, you don't have to deal with them. But it hardly explains a song about somebody so devastatingly alcoholic. Closing the album, we have the nice ballad, Coming Back to You When the Time Comes. It's a great closer, and this might be my favorite track on here. The chorus is definitely something I could see a bunch of people drinking to together and just all chanting simultaneously.
We'll share our days, share our nights, share all the things we like. When I'll be coming back to you when the time comes.
Electronically Tested would peak at number 13 on the UK albums charts, but it hardly has any legacy to it. While the band did have a couple other hits in their native England, globally they're really just recognized as being a one-hit wonder. But boy, what a wonder that hit was. Electronically Tested definitely feels like an album you'd toss on if you're having a fun house party back in the 70s. The band really shows their diversity between making cheery, fun, happy, upbeat pop tunes, while also getting down and gritty with some hard rock and blues tunes with multiple guitar solos. With that in mind, I'm going to stamp Mungo Jerry's second album with a B+ grading. While a lot of the album's lyrics still hold up today, there are some of them that that feel a little problematic now, that for some reason weren't back then. This is the only real flaw to the album though. No bad songs, but not a whole lot of great ones either. And finally, our last album for today. This one from another longtime supporter of the channel, in one Miss Brie, who you can usually find bullying me in my own comment sections. We have Phoebe Bridgers' breakout album, Punisher. Phoebe Bridgers is an indie singer-songwriter out of Pasadena, who now has 2 albums under her belt. Well, 2 solo albums, that is. She is also part of the all-female trio Boy Genius, along with other indie singer-songwriters Julian Baker and Lucy Dacus, and she is also part of the duo Better Oblivion Community Center with Connor Oberst, better known as frontman of the group Bright Eyes. Phoebe Bridgers' 2017 debut solo release Stranger in the Alps received generally positive reviews all around, setting her up well for her sophomore release. The album opens with a somber instrumental intro and DVD menu, which then brings us to the album's first single, Garden Song. It sees her sing about growing older, persevering hardships, and finding what she really wants out of life. Following this is the album's second single, Kyoto, based on a trip Bridgers took to Japan, where she dissociated from everything and just really kind of always wanting to be where you're not. And then when you are where you want to be, you no longer want to be there. The inclusion of the horns on this track is very good in my opinion. And for the music video for it, it was supposed to actually be filmed in Japan, but they were limited due to the COVID-19 outbreak. So the way it turned out, where she's just green screened in front of all sorts of different places, I think probably worked out even better. The only thing holding me back on this song is her lyrical style, because she has a very dry, casual, upfront way of writing, and I just can't get behind it is all. After this, we have the title track, Punisher, an homage to her longtime idol, Elliott Smith. It's another nice and relaxing tune, but with how great a voice she has, I wish she would show it off more, because she's got some sort of effects on it that make it sound like she's singing with a robot on this.
She ever thought the storybook tiles on the roof were too much?
The next track on the album is Halloween, another nice and relaxing one. Bridgers even admitted that while writing it, she was stumped for lyrics finishing the last part of it, when Connor Oberst suggested she sing about some story that she apparently always talks about, where a fan was beaten to death at a baseball game. And that whole part's just kind of there in the song. It's just out of nowhere. It doesn't connect to anything else. It feels so irrelevant. What is happening? After this is the track Chinese Satellite, which sees Bridgers addressing her agnosticism while also wishing that she kind of did believe in a higher power. And in that sense, I find this song quite relatable. I feel like, obviously there's some cons, but there's a lot of pros in participating in a religion. However, I myself feel I would never truly be able to commit to that, just based on the fact that I personally don't believe in anything bigger than us. The 7th track on the album, Moon Song, has some of her best writing on the album, for the most part. Following this is Savior Complex, the album's 4th single, and Phoebe's vocal melody is just wonderful. While the strings on it sound very nice, I feel like there was just too much additional production done. There's just way too many sounds just tossed in there that feel like they're just there for the sake of it.
Tears from the tap till it's clear. Drift off on the floor.
Next is ICU, the album's 3rd single, and the first upbeat track on the album for a while now. She does have some good and hard-hitting lyrics on this one, and I'll admit, I'm surprised by how much I enjoy this tune.
I'm standing too close. I can see the brush stroke.
After this, we have more of a country ballad in Graceland 2. This song sees her boy genius bandmates Julianne Baker and Lucy Dacus joining her. And then the album's closing track, I Know the End. There's some fascinating lyrics on this somber track that eventually picks up, and I really love the sound it delivers between the guitar, the violin, and the horns on it. This then ends with a full-on explosion in the emotional peak of the album and a fantastic conclusion to it. Honestly, the only thing I have to say is I love how great the climax to this song was. I wish it went on for even longer, but that could just be the post-rock fan in me. Punisher was very well received, seeing Phoebe Bridgers blow up into pretty much being a household name now, at the very least in the indie scene. Herself, the album, and the song Kyoto were all nominated for Grammys, and my lord, was there anybody's best albums of 2020 list that this album was not on? Despite all this, it surprisingly only peaked at number 43 on the US albums chart. While Phoebe Bridgers does have a fantastic voice, I feel a lot of songs on this album are ones that I do not have the urge to revisit. And for that reason, I will be stamping Punisher with a B- grading. She just has a upfront and direct lyrical style that just doesn't resonate with me. Of course, she's not alone in this. While even on Arctic Monkeys' Humbug, there was one line that stuck out to me like this. However, with it being a single instance, I was fine just overlooking that. Yet with Punisher, there feels like there's a whole lot of that going on. It could even be that her personality just seems so radically different from mine personally, and that with it coming out through her music, I just don't click with it. Now, I could easily see this take being contradictory to some of the previous albums I've graded. While I have ragged on weak, irrelevant, or straight up nonsensical lyrics that I still gave high grades to in the past, such as Death Scream Bloody Gore or Melvin's Houdini, it's because in their cases, the vocals and the lyricism anyways, hardly seems like the focal point of those albums, where it's more so based on the sound, the aggression, and the pure heaviness of it. With Bridgers being a singer-songwriter, I feel there's just that much more focus put on the lyrics. They play a much larger role in each song. And this is something that's a double-edged sword. With lyrics standing out that much more, it makes it that much easier to catch great ones, but also that much easier to catch not great ones. Other singer-songwriters I've reviewed in the past include Tom Waits with Closing Time and Townes Van Zandt with Our Mother the Mountain, with the latter specifically having exceptional songwriting and just really thought-provoking lines. The thing is, lyrics don't even necessarily have to be impressive though. If you look at the Mungo Jerry album we sat through, it's all just very standard writing. So while none of the lyrics are impressive, none of them, well, most of them aren't terrible either. It's just a very neutral level. So while it doesn't add a whole lot, it's at least not subtracting anything from the album. Another bone I have to pick with this album is that the production just felt too overkill, like I said earlier. Like, too many sounds were just added in just for the sake of it. And while a lot of this came in small instances that could be overlooked and forgotten, like on Halloween or Moonsong, on Savior Complex, it was just that much more blatant. So while these sounds do feel unnecessary, furthermore, they're taking away from Phoebe herself and really just limiting, it might only be a small bit, but it's still limiting how much of her is really shining through the song, I find. Now, I am definitely in the minority for my thoughts on this album, with how greatly praised it is. But I will admit, originally I even thought less of it. So that is to say, it has grown on me a bit over time and with more listens. I also have to add in that the cover of it is awesome. Thank you for tuning in to these hot takes. Be sure to Give me hell in the comments if I disrespected your favorite albums, and we'll see you next time.